Zanhuzun, good afternoon, everybody. Katlias Uza, Tlega Hut an Aslan, Bedzichte an Aslan, Tla Loga Hut an Sadanslit, Ich da Fairbanks Listo. I'm Dewey Katlia Hoffman. I'm here today with our esteemed guest, Sam Demientieff. We're going to be sharing a few stories. I wanted to share that today's presentation is produced by Danakanaga, which is a nonprofit that serves as the voice for Alaskan Native elders throughout the interior. Danakanaga collaborates with the Morris Thompson Center and Tana Chiefs Conference to bring you the Our People Speak series, with generous support from Doyon Limited. Today's program marks the 20th episode in the series and our second in-person program since COVID. I think our first one was together here. The series features elders and culture bearers discussing seasonal Alaska Native cultural topics. I'll be your host for today's program. A few announcements quickly. This episode will be recorded and released January 13th, next Friday, on the Morris Thompson Center website, Facebook, and YouTube. You can revisit this program again anytime you like on those platforms. Watch our other 19 programs, the other series that we've produced. Also, at the end of this program, Pat will be just outside the theater door there with an email sign-up if you'd like to be notified of our upcoming programs in the future. She'll have comment cards and would really appreciate receiving your feedback. And you can be entered in for the chance to win a lovely beaded pop socket. You know those things that you stick on your phone and you can grab it easier. There is more information in the back. Okay, so Basit, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll begin. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. My name is Sam Demientieff. I'm from Holy Cross, which is a village about 240 miles from the mouth of the Yukon River. I was born in 1939, and when I was asked about this and about the weather and about clothing, it just brings back the memories of when I was a kid. And when I grew up in the village of Holy Cross, and all of the villages back then, this was just before the war, World War II. So living in rural Alaska, like Holy Cross, as a kid, 5 or 6 years old, we didn't know anything about the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. We knew about fish camp. Went down to the fish camp, fish in the summertime, and going out, playing in a sandbar. So just all the things that are. But as we grew up, we wore the clothes and lived in the time when the temperature was way different from today. So I think about the clothes and where we lived. And it's an interesting thing if you think about people today, especially young people. They're used to and they lived with all of the electronic devices we use today. And we accept without question. Television, phones, iPhones, computers. We didn't have any of those when I grew up. We played with games using sticks from the river for playing ball. Mm-hmm. We had a softball that was all beat up, and we played tag. Now, what do you need to play tag? You don't need nothing.
Just your hands, I
guess. Just stretch over and you're it. Yeah. You know, and run around. And you played flag. You ever play flag? Mm-hmm. Play flag. You got a stick over here and a stick over there, goals. You make a circle in the sand over here and you play. Eskimo baseball. I didn't know what Eskimo baseball was, but I learned because at Holy Cross there was a Catholic mission designed to help orphaned kids from epidemics earlier in those times. A lot of people died and they're orphaned, sent them to Holy Cross Mission. So I got to know a lot of kids, young orphaned kids from all over the coastal area. And they brought in their games. But I just want to tell you that when Pat said that we're going to be, we meaning me and Andy Jimmy would be presenters, I was really happy because I know Andy Jimmy. And together I think that he lived up in Minto, I lived down in Lower Yukon, 500 or 600 miles down further down the Yukon, so a little bit different areas. But I know that the stories we have, when I'm talking about kids, I have to show you what my mom made me when I was 7 or 8 years old. She was making me these mucklucks. And she did not have these moose skin bottoms on there yet. She just had the calf skin and the fur showed around here. And I think it was my wife helped finish these off, put the moose skin on there. But these are boots that we wore. Now, feel that. Feel how, see that's just like a feather, right?
Yep.
Now, if you look at the shoes kids wear today, they're rubber and they're heavy. Not heavy, but they certainly aren't lightweight like this. And with these, when I grew up, you could run around and you can run over rocks, and you knew you were running on rocks because you could feel them. So you were in contact with the earth. Now it's important to remember that we are earth people, come from the earth, go back to the earth, and we, in our culture, we respect the earth because we make our living and survive from animals, plants, fish, everything. So we have to know our world. So when you have these boots like this, and they're made for kids, they're lightweight and they're warm. So anyway, I'll stop right there and see if you have any other questions or.
Yeah, that's a great introduction into some of the history of our traditional clothing and how things have changed today. I wanted to also ask you a bit about what you've observed about the weather patterns, and maybe even if there are things that you could share about how to anticipate and read what you observe.
Okay. Now, I said I was born in Holy Cross, and Andy Jimmy was born in Minto. Well, I want to point out to you, just up here on the map, I guess you can right about here is where Holy Cross is.
Okay.
And Minto is right about here on the Tanana, and Holy Cross is on the Yukon River. Now, we're affected by the ocean, the Bering Sea there, and the Pacific, and the weather systems, the winds, the systems of the earth. The wind comes from the southwest. So it always hits right into Bethel and comes right in and hits Holy Cross. So we always have what is called a prevailing wind. Generally, a prevailing wind is where it always blows from, that general direction. So our prevailing wind comes right up this valley like this. And as it gets through here, it diminishes. By the time it gets to Aunt Jimmy's place, there isn't it. There's a prevailing wind there too, and it just depends on the Minto Flats, long, big flats, and the prevailing wind is from southwest going northeast. So this idea of being able to predict weather or see what's coming. I remember once we meaning my dad and our cousin, is Joe Demientieff, had a gas boat, a 28-foot boat, 8 feet wide, canvas top, little motor in the inside, one-lung universal or red wing motor. My dad hired him to bring us from Holy Cross down to the Yukon, mouth of the Yukon River, to pick up a diesel motor for one of our boats. Now, there I am, 15 years old, going downriver, going down to the coastal area where I'd never been before. We always travel upriver. So we're going down the Yukon with Joe and my dad, and we're coming down towards out of the hills. Once you get down lower Yukon area, the hills get smaller and smaller, and then you come to the flats. It's all the flats of the Yukon Kayakuk area and right on the coast, so you're at sea level. We're going down to Alaskan, Hamilton, two small places. And as we're coming down there, just at the last hill, my dad is talking to Joe. Joe, he says, look down the Yukon there. What do you see? Looking down there. So I'm looking too, and I'm seeing down there, and he says, looks like whitecaps. He said, yeah. And he said, but there's no sign of wind, We don't see any dark clouds. So dark clouds, some weather coming in from the southwest, the prevailing area, coming right up that way. I'm saying, well, okay, it's clear. There's no wind. We can't see anything moving to the trees or the brush alongside. And, oh, I know what it is. Beluga whales. Joe says, beluga whales? Oh, yeah, I heard about beluga whales. Yeah, what's going on? He says, those are beluga whales. It's June. Now, this is the season where the fish are coming up the Yukon River in springtime. There's thousands, if not millions, of salmon coming up, flooding the Yukon River. Back in that time, the salmon and the fish are just flooding the river.
Thick.
It's just thick, yeah. Now, these beluga whales are feeding on migrating salmon, and they just follow the run. So they're surfacing and eating and blowing and surfacing, and when you look down there, yeah, it looked like a bunch of whitecaps.
Wow.
So whitecaps, that's a sign of weather. So you're going to ask this question about the weather? Yeah, whitecaps. If you look down the Yukon River or any big river, and you see down there and you see some kind of dark clouds, there's weather coming, and there's a sign right there, whitecaps. Big, big. And then in the lower Yukon, they produce rolling waves. Now, rolling waves are big waves that just start being pushed up, and you have these big waves that just are going up and down like this. And on top of them are the whitecaps. So when you get in those rolling waves, you feel the boat going down and then coming up and down. So to me, that was new. I never felt that. And that's certainly different. But there's answer one of your questions there about how do you predict weather and how do you see signs
in the more coastal area.
Yeah. So I got that when I say signs, we're always watching for signs in nature. Now, you've been down to Howard Luke's camp here? Okay,
yeah.
Well, I think a number of us have been down there. Howard Luke's, one of his good sayings is, watch for signs in nature, Sam. Watch for signs in nature. You know what I mean? I say, oh, yeah, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, well, tell me what you think. I said, well, if it's, I go down and see the water in the river level. It's low. That's a sign that it's probably late summer, or it has not rained a lot. So those signs tell you a lot about what's going on in your world. So if you see signs of looking down river and you see these big bunch of geese flying, whole big bunch of them, Those signs. So, and observing everything that's around you will tell you how to live and how to react and how to dress and what to look for. So when you think about it, it's using common sense. I have a person I know and love very well that tells me all the time, use your common sense, Sam. And I do. I listen to. It's just pure using your understanding and making sure you keep doing that in your life. So
It can definitely apply to a lot of areas in your life.
Look at these clothes, all these furs and everything. They're using your knowledge, local knowledge.
So when we're thinking about in the interior during this time of year, in the deep winter, are there certain things you can look for to maybe think or see if it's going to dip down or if it's going to warm up or anything like that?
Yeah. It's a difficult question because it's not a good thing for us to see happening to our area, especially Alaska. You know, and I'm talking about climate change. You know, early on it was called global warming. I remember going down to Howard's place and sitting there talking to him, and he says, "Don't say that, Sam. Don't say global warming." And I was wondering, well, why? I said, well, that's true. You know, he said, the globe doesn't warm itself. It's not global warming. The weather is changing. The climate is changing. Climate change. Well, that makes sense, you know. So
Ahead of his time, huh?
yeah, isn't that something? You know, so I started, now everybody calls it climate change,
Widely
which is the
accepted
truth.
term, yeah.
And once again, it's using your sense, your common sense, you know, what the hell's around you.
Yeah.
So whenever you ask and talk about how weather was when I was a kid, I always say that back in that time, from the 40s and 50s, the winter and all those seasons were predictably what they were. Like in winter, it was predictable. Every winter, you can count on sometime during December and January and February through there, you would always get 2 to 3 weeks of what the radio announcers, the weather reporters called a cold snap. We knew it. We knew what that was. A cold snap is when the temperature drops down to 40 and 50 and 60 below and stays there. It goes up during the daytime, maybe 5 or 6 degrees to 55 below, and then drops back down to 60 below or even colder. There are cold spots in Alaska. There are low areas. Northway is a famous place for cold weather, where Yukon is, and it gets down to 60, maybe even 70 below zero. No, think about that, you know? So now, back in the 50s, during the war years, when the military came up here, they had a hard time. They could not keep their motors running. And if you think about using oil, you know, some of the oil would not bend. Grease would be frozen.
Wow.
And if you're using propane, it doesn't flow. So you go open the valve, and at 42 below zero, propane stops flowing. And so, back then they had synthetic rubber tires on the vehicles. And those, when a vehicle's sitting on the ground, the tire's round on top, but where it's touching the ground is kind of flat. It's a little flat area. Those synthetic tires would freeze solid, flat. So you get out there, and if you can get your vehicle started, if you keep it warm and cover it, and you get it running and it warms up, when you put it in gear, you know, push your clutch in, and you could feel it resisting because the whole thing is frozen up. You push it in and feel it, and it's not engaging. The pressure plate and the clutch is not engaging, they're stuck. But the whole point of this story, this thing about the vehicles, is that the tires would slide. If you get the back tires moving, the front tires would slide along the surface.
On the flat part?
Yeah, they couldn't turn. And so, but if you drove along, and if you're in a straight, lucky enough to have your driveway where you can drive straight for about 20 or 30 feet, and finally clunk, 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 and it's going around and hitting that flat part, boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And after a while, they'd round out.
That's happened to me before.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess I'm trying to make is you don't see that today. Weather today is unpredictable. They can tell the weather when the weather today is more violent, longer periods of extreme weather, and it just keeps going on and on. It's worse and worse. And there's reasons for that. And we know what we have to do in this modern world we live in. We know what we have to do, and that's stop using fossil fuels. All that means, fossil fuels means oil. When you burn that oil, it gets in the atmosphere. We're using so much fossil fuels, and if you look at a jet airplane, you ever see the contrails on a jet? There are huge volumes of exhaust coming out there, and every time, and there's thousands of planes flying every day, and they're polluting the air. And so we're in a predicament, the human beings. So anyway, I'm starting to preach now. So.
Well, what are some ways that our native technology would help keep us protected during really cold weather?
Well, the thing to do, and what we usually always do, everybody does this, you get up and you put your clothes on, and if you put clothes on to go outside, back in the 50s and 60s, we started using more and more commercial clothes bought from the catalogs and from the stores in Fairbanks or wherever local stores you had. Those clothes were noisy. You ever think about that?
Yeah, my uncle had some stern words for me when I took a certain coat out moose hunting because it made too much noise.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah.
You know? So people, when they're making clothes, they're not considering Alaska or some place where they got 60 below zero, because some of those clothes and the lining would break.
Wow.
There's certain plastic or some kind of lining in there would crack. But
yeah.
you can't wear clothes like that. And a lot of those clothes were heavy. And the parkas, when you pull them up, these hoods aren't supposed to go all the way over your face. Because when you're out in nature, when you're out hunting or on the river or anywhere, you have to see everything around you. You have to be able to hear them. So these clothes that we make are quiet because you have to hear animals, birds. You have to hear moose calling. You have to hear things. You have to be aware of your surrounding. And so these clothes are used from animals that live here. And those are lightweight and they're warm. Have you ever slept on a moose skin rug? You ever slept on one of those?
No, caribou.
Caribou, yeah, caribou same way. You sleep on those things and they're comfortable and they're warm. If you're sleeping on it, your back is always warm. And so that fur has they're hollow in the inside. And the fur is about that long.
Pretty thick, yeah.
And it's thick. So when you use those clothes you're using from animals that know how to, they were created that way to be able to survive in this environment. So quiet, close, lightweight, and when you use them, they're supposed to be able to help you. So these parkas you see now, big parkas, and they have big, and I have a big parka. I have an Eddie Bauer parka,
Yeah.
you know, and it's heavy, damn warm, good. But practically back in time, they weren't practical. The men and women used to layer their clothes. Layers mean just put clothes over clothes, and to a certain point you stop. And I remember my dad always had a pullover parka, windbreaker, that was just a one piece right down to right above your knees, and you always put over, put your hands in the sleeves, pull the parka on over your head, and it was just a plain hood. It came up to right about here, cover your face right here, and you covered your arms up to here, came down to right above your knees, and just one piece. Everything's all one big piece. And right here in front, you had two pockets, and they were big ones. Now, you see these wolfskin mitts here? When you're using these, you got all dressed up, and you got your big windbreaker, and you put this over your hood. You got these. Now, when you're out on a trap line and you stop your dogs, you stop on the trail, you stop, and you got your hook down, or if you have a good team, you can tell them, lay down. They lay down right there, wait. You have to go check your traps. So you take these, you're using these, and inside of these you have gloves, canvas gloves usually, or some kind of gloves. So you're mushing on the dog, the handle there, and it's keeping you warm. But as soon as you get to your place, you take these, and in the back here you just do a loop like that, and you got your gloves. Now you can go work on your traps. You can take them out, you can hook your dogs, unhook them, you can use snaps. Once you get done, just like that, take the thing right out of there, and you're ready to start mushing dogs with your warm mitts.
All right.
Put these right on like that, mush dogs.
What kind of fur is on there?
Wolf.
Nice.
I won these when I was a kid and a teenager. I was in the junior dog mushers here in Fairbanks, and so I won these. One of the prizes I got was musher, a dog musher.
Cool.
So this clothes, the beaver caps are really good warm hats, caps.
You got one on the end there?
Yeah. This one here's a beaver cap.
Looks pretty cozy.
Oh yeah.
I got another
Really
example.
good.
Another example here. Similar design, but made with seal
Yeah.
and otter.
Wherever you come from in Alaska, the people there use those furs from the animals and from that area.
Yep.
And seal skins, and bushkin and caribou skins, ugruk, those are stuff from along the coast. So I bought this cap. You know what this cap is?
For looking good?
Back in the early days, I was in my talk, I was going to talk about Village, Alaska. No television, no radios, no phones, no anything, no contact, the only thing we had was a sandbar for the airplane to land during the summer. And during the summer, they had some planes on floats. So I got to tell you a little story on this thing about Holy Cross. The mission there had big gardens, big potato gardens along the hill. And so whenever during the winter, when the women in the village ordered their clothes from Sears Roebuck or Montgomery
JCPenney.
Ward.
Mhm.
Took 4 to 6 weeks. You got to order early so you can get your gifts delivered. So when it got real cold, the airplanes would land with skis
Mhm.
on the snow. But if it was too snowy and they didn't have a chance to snowshoe down the runway, the mail planes used to fly over and throw all the mail sacks out the window. So we got real airmail.
Watch out now.
But the little story I want to tell you was my mom's good friend next door. She came over and her and my mom were ordering clothes and toys. And when the mail plane came, it usually lands, but they couldn't land. So they buzz the village and they fly over slowly and throw out the mail sacks. And the postmaster goes up there and gathers up 8 or 9 or 10 mail sacks and brings them down there and distributes in the post office. So after the next day, Mom's friend comes over and knock on the door and says, "Nellie, I got my order. You got your order?" "Yeah, we got my order." "I got one thing I ordered, it's broken." And she says, "Well, what is it?" She says, "Well, I went over and she got it back." She says, "It was a mirror." She ordered a mirror for her bathroom.
Mm.
The bathroom in the village, no running water, no television, no phones, no electricity, no nothing.
Yeah.
We had candles, we had gas lanterns. If we were lucky to have a gas lantern,
Mhm.
but usually lamps. So she ordered this ceramic edged mirror from Sears Roebuck.
Mm.
Looked very good. Ceramic edge. And the mirror about this big, and it was broken.
Mm.
And so she, "What do we think I should send it back?" Mom said, "No, don't send it back. It'll take you a long time. Maybe you might not get it back.
Mm.
We'll glue it together." So, okay, so they put it upside down, fixed it all together, 7 or 8 pieces, and glued it together, and took the ceramic edge and glued it together and fit perfectly. So next day they come over and they turn it over. All good.
All right.
Yeah, it's all right, but when you look in the mirror, you can see these lines, see these little cracks, and you have to find yourself a good little place where you can see your whole face without having a crack run through it. I remember for a long time we were kids, we'd go over and visit them next door and see their kids, and I'd go in the mirror, go in the bathroom and look. Airmail.
Village fabulous, huh?
Yeah. So that's all. And when you said these caps were, this is not really an actual flyer's or a pilot's cap. This is based on a pilot's cap. But back then, they had these blue and red caps like this, and the pilots, the bush pilots that wore them, whoever out bought these, and it was kind of a style.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see these, and they got popular.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, a lot of men in the village. Now this is based on those caps. They stopped making them.
Mm.
When I heard they were selling them during AFN one winter, they had one of my buddies from Holy Cross says, "Sam, you got to run down there to the surplus store because they have those pilot caps. They're running out. You better run down there if you want to get one." So I ran down there and I bought one. $8.95.
Good deal.
And it just fit. So this is my pilot's cap.
Nice. My grandpa had that kind.
Well, so that's a little bit stories about the. But I do have a story about clothes.
Yeah, please.
You want me to tell you that one?
Okay.
This is a true story. This relates to the elders from Beaver on the Yukon Flats. And during World War II, lots of men in the villages and women were getting drafted into the Army. And so that meant if you got that draft notice, you got to go. There's no question. I don't care. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you go. And so this fellow was out there, and he said he was out and he was up this creek, and he found some gold. And he said, "Oh," he just said, "You know, I got that in this creek. I finally got to the place where it was pretty shallow, 7 or 8 feet down. There was bedrock." He said, "I seen gold on there." So I went back and hauled out with my dog team this thing to help him thaw out the ground into gold pan. And he left his equipment out there. And I see coming back and forth. The winter passed, the next winter, and he said that I got my notice from the draft, so I have to report. So go into Fairbanks, go out to Ladd Field, which is Fort Wainwright, and report in, fly down to Anchorage. I go through basic training, everything like that, and they send me and others down to the Aleutian Islands. Now this man is from Beaver, Alaska, right in the middle of the Yukon Flats.
One of the places where it gets cold, huh?
Yeah, where it gets cold, but it certainly doesn't blow like the Aleutian Islands, which is just little rock islands, no trees, and the wind is blowing all the time.
I think some of the houses there, they even have to stretch iron cables across the roof
Yeah,
to keep them from blowing off.
so he's in the Army there.
Mm-hmm.
And he writes to his mom in Beaver and tells her, "Mom, you got to send down my beaver cap, my mooskin mittens, my mucklucks, and that big windbreaker parka, because I'm freezing down here."
Mm-hmm.
So it happens, she packs them up, sends them down to Aleutian Islands, he gets them, and he puts them on. Beaver cap, mooskin mittens, the big mucklucks right up to here, over parka, and he's warm.
Mm.
The colonel, the commanding officer of where he is there, sees him and he's comfortable. And he calls him and says, "Private, where do you get your clothes?" He said, "My mom sent them." "Well, you know, you're not in uniform. You're out of uniform." He said, "Yeah, but I'm no good if I freeze to death."
Mm.
He said, "Yeah, you're right." So after that, the colonel sees that there's a something that the Army needs to understand. Wherever they send their troops in the world, you have to understand where they are and the climate is.
Mm-hmm.
So he asks if the colonel, asks if the United States military could make their clothes based upon his mom's mooskin hat, mitts and beaver cap and boots and parka.
Mm.
And she says, "Oh yeah, anything to keep those guys warm." So they do. Now, the military today, you see them with their mouton caps with that, just like this. They're made just like this. Mouton cap with flaps on it, and they're tied underneath here. And their mitts, they have big mouton mitts, and they have mouton on the back, and they're wool on the inside, and they're big mitts, just like those. And their boots are the same way. They're canvas bottom, and they're tied up right
Go
here.
pretty far up.
And they cover the whole thing.
Mm.
And so he said, "Well, we could patent these for you, for your mom." He said, "I don't know what you mean." He said, "We can patent them." Patent them means you get to write, every time they make these clothes, you get some money. And he said, "Well, I don't know. You have to ask my mom. She's the one to make them." So he writes to her, and she said, "I don't want any money. Because if that's going to help those troopers, make them." So she said, I don't want this, just anything to help the military. Now, if you back up and think about why do the native people, men and women, fight during the war? And their question was answered when the elders said, what are you going to fight for? And they said, well, we're fighting to be free. The United States is fighting for freedom. That's what they call America is free. They said, well, geez, we always live free. This way we live. That's how we survive.
Mm-hmm.
We're free. We were made this way. So if you want to fight, you're doing the right thing because you're protecting the way we live, free. So that's why the Native people said, yes, we're willing to go out and fight for Alaska and fight for the United States in this war. Isn't that something?
Hmm.
It's amazing. We're born. People are born free, you know. We're all over Alaska. Look at the whole doggone thing, and they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I think about before statehood, or, you know, when my mom describes growing up going to seasonal fish camp in the summertime in different areas and riding around on dog sled, I picture a sensation of freedom there. Just going where you need to go, when you want to go, have all your needs met. And I think that ties back to our native values of being self-sufficient and thinking ahead and sharing with one another, things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that I'm wearing was gifted to me. You know, I learned how to skin sew a little bit. My friends, and I got a pattern for these from Sitsu Murray Yaska, and she really helped me. And then some ladies from Kayaka gave me some moose hide, and learned how to stretch the leggings of the wolf and the wolverine. And like you were saying earlier, you know, when you're outside, you want to try not to offend the animals, because they hear everything and they see everything. And so I think about, you know, when we're wearing our traditional clothing, it not only looks good, but we're honoring the animals and passing down that skill. Some people think that they can't do something until maybe they try it. Like, I never thought I would be a skin sewer until I just tried it. And it turns out it took a long time, but I really, you know, enjoyed it and was grateful for all the support. Maybe I noticed you pointed out these boots here.
Yeah.
They're got the moose hide on the bottom, right?
Yeah. Moose on the bottom, this is canvas here.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever whoever's making it, they like to make it look good. It's fancy.
Mm-hmm.
This here is for tightening, so it keeps snow on the top. In the bottom, I have in here, in these, a felt liner.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to get felt insoles. Was the first thing I came in that was commercial. But if you look at these, it's going to be a little messy, but grass.
Oh, okay.
Just get grass from along the lakes.
Just regular tall grass.
Yeah, just regular grass.
Mm-hmm.
Now you use this grass. They use it for dog boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Get your dog team out there and use boxes. You get this grass put in there, it keeps them warm. You get in the mission, Holy Cross Mission, they used to make their little mattresses for the kids, the boys and girls bunk areas. They took this grass and used them for mattresses.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, it's lightweight, it's natural, doesn't cost a damn thing, you know.
Is that just to keep the shape, or you wear it like that?
I wear it like that.
Oh, okay.
The
Insulation,
grass,
maybe.
the grass, of course, it's not going to just sit there. It moves around, but you have to keep taking it out and drying it. It's easy to dry,
Yeah.
and if it wears into bundles where you can't make use of it with your feet, just get some more.
Yeah.
Go get some more grass and remake it.
There you go.
Yeah. Nature.
Mm-hmm. These are example of store-bought kind. These are Steigers from Canada. They call them mucklucks. But it's all moose hide that's been commercially tanned, canvas on the top, and then they put rubber coating on the bottom so it's waterproof. But same thing with these kind. You can feel the texture of the ground when you walk on there.
That's important. You know, losing your contact with the earth. I remember when we went to in Holy Cross, we were using mucklucks and boots all the time, and then we got the parents ordered galoshes.
Oh yeah.
You know, the rubber galoshes come up to about here. They had metal buckles. The bottom was waterproof, but they were great. The only problem was they were heavy. Us kids were used to mucklucks, you know, real lightweight and run around. But we got those galoshes. In the springtime, especially when it warms up, your mucklucks get wet.
Yeah.
And so they lose their heat, but they start getting real loose. But if you had their galoshes and you put those on, whenever it got wet, that really worked good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, these would probably need some kind of covering, you know, if you're walking around in town where they use salt and things like that. Yeah.
they had from downriver, they had ugruk skin mucklucks that they were waterproof, and they weren't covered with fur. They were covered with that, so they were waterproof. They had the ability to use waterproof clothes too. And
Yeah,
windproof.
and trade still happens, but traditionally would occur between the coastal people and the Yukon people. Hard bottom soles,
Yeah.
which are good they can get wet. Yeah.
The other thing about when you're living off the land, trappers are very aware of touching anything that could contain smell, because when you're out there, animals have a real keen sense of smell, and once they smell that, they just stay away from it. So you got to keep your traps. Some trappers boil them, or they take them, clean them all up and boil them, and then they store them outside and keep them hanging away from anything that would attract smell. And so using these inside your moose skin mitts, you had special gloves you use for touching the traps so you don't have that smell on it. So there's a real science and a real use of natural knowledge of how to live and survive in the cold weather and the time of darkness and the time of real bright lights. You know, I remember. Do you ever get snowblind?
Yeah, my almost like a sunburn on my eyeballs before. Yeah.
Yeah,
that wasn't good.
I got snowblind once, and but the coastal people are the ones that came up with these wooden sunglasses. They were just a piece of wood about this long, and they tie with a tie along the back. They put right over your eyes like this, and right across here is a slit, so you can look through them, and it shades your eyes. And so when you look around and see some of those men, and they have those wooden slits on, you wonder what the hell they're wearing, you know? Well, sunglasses, you know, so.
Original shades.
Yeah, it was just
Yeah, our native technology has really become widespread with watercraft and lightweight, durable clothing, anything that you could buy in the stores, would wear out. But our hide materials and things, you need to replace them, but you can still use them and pass them on.
Yeah.
Is there any other recollections you have, or what is it that you want our future generations to really hold on to when it comes to some of these things that you're sharing with us today?
Well, it's, I think that, the old traditional or cultural sayings about the future is, there's a lot of things going to happen, but you should be always prepared to be able to survive on your own. So knowing when just are talking about not using clothes that smell, who would think of that? But if you think about it, it's real. And if you know the animals, I remember that when I went out with my older brother and he was hunting, he was trapping fox on the other side of the airport back here, before the airport was there. He went out with his dog team and trapped out across the Tana. But he was telling me, he said, I'm going to trap for fox right in this lake area. And he said, go over there and get the pack sack and get that little red ribbon. So we went out and found his little hair ribbon, little red hair ribbon. And he said, watch this. So he goes over to the willow, about this high, there's a bunch of willows there, and he took one willow and tied that ribbon in there and tied a knot and tied it real good. And he said, that's how I'm going to trap. He said, because a fox comes out here and they take one glance of a lake, everything's normal, goes on. And then once they step on this lake, they're going to glance at everything and boink, they're going to stop. There's something there. And they're going to go over and look, see what the hell it is, food.
Oh.
So they go over there, they walk around it, and you can see their tracks. They walk around and they look at it, they're smelling. So telling the kids to be able to listen to these stories, because they really help you in understanding how to, outsmart or think how an animal thinks.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, those are simple things. Now you know it's going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's going to come back there and look, see what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you set your trap.
You got to capture their curiosity, huh?
Yeah. He said it's just, and the other thing is, he called it hunter's eyes. Now what does that tell you? You know what it told me? He said, we all do it. We drive down through town here, and we all have, in our minds, we have our route where we're going to go, to go where we're going. Like when me and my wife drove up here, we talked about how we're going to come drive up here. Well, hunter's eyes, the animals come in, they look. And we do the same thing. When we're going down the river and we're hunting moose, look around, see an area, see there's spruce trees like this, and then there's no spruce trees, the willows and spruce trees. That's a lake over the bank. There's a lake back there. That's a kind of moose kind of like to walk around in those places.
Yep.
So using your eyes to recognize things in nature that give you signs. Once again, like Howard said, signs in nature. It's always telling you something,
You just got to know how to interpret it, huh?
Yeah, we do it all the time. Everybody does it. I mean, just driving to work, and she looks up the road and see those lights blinking.
Yeah.
Trouble, cops, fire, police, something going on. So it's just using your common sense and using your knowledge.
Yeah, even for other things too, like I was taught to keep a lookout for the dead standing cottonwood that we use for smoking. with all the branches are already broken off, and it's just kind of like barely standing up. We try to get that kind for smoking fish.
Yeah.
And it's usually, you can find it right on the side of the river. But you could easily just drive right past it.
Yeah. I remember coming up the Yukon River. We freighted our family freighted the Yukon River during the war years from early 1940s to 1952. So we're all from Nenana to Galena. So we always passed your parents' camps, fish camp, Bubba Ruby there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Big Eddie.
Yeah.
My aunt's still there.
Yeah.
She keeps it up.
I knew all the people up and down the river.
Well, we're almost coming to a close here. I'd like to invite you to share any last...
We're just getting to having
I know,
fun
we're just
talking
warming
about
up.
stuff.
I really enjoy all the memories you're sharing with us, and it's conjuring a lot of thoughts and emotions. And we want to keep this series ongoing. Really appreciate folks who came to participate and be here today.
I do have one thing though.
Yeah, please.
We talk about in the program. It mentioned wisdom. The thing that I remember real distinctly about wisdom is from an elder from the Ukiahcook River, who during the debate that during the Claims Act, then Alaska's Native Claims Settlement Act, the definition of subsistence living. What does that subsistence mean? And there was a big debate all over. It means this, it means that. So they couldn't really come up with a definition. But they had a congressional hearing here in Fairbanks at the university, and there were senators and the congressmen were there holding this congressional hearing, inviting people from the rural areas to come in and testify what they believe the definition is. And so I talked to a friend of mine who said, hey, that'd be interesting to go and listen to some of these. So there was an elder that came in, just like I said, from the Ukiahcook, and he got up there, said, you want to testify? And he said, yeah, I want to tell you what subsistence means to me. They said, well, that's why we're here. So it's all going to be recorded, and it's recorded in the Congressional Subcommittee hearing on subsistence. He said, well, I don't know you guys, but you want to know what subsistence is. He said, for me, subsistence is the way I live. I live in the springtime. We're getting ready for summertime. We're getting our fish reels and our nets ready, and we're getting everything ready to go out and do things we have to do during the summer. So I'm always preparing for that. When the summer comes and we're fishing and doing everything, we know fall's coming. In the fall time, we know that we have to go out and there's berry picking and cut wood for the winter and prepare for the dried fish, dry meat, and hunt and put everything up for the winter. When the winter's here, we have to hunt and fish and get ready for springtime, because springtime. So he went on, described every season, everything that you have to prepare for and work through to survive for the next part of the season. He comes right back to the fall and then back to spring. He said, springtime, things changed a little bit in my life, but I still have to go out. And so my life is like following, is not like, it is living with the seasons of the earth and knowing it, because all of this helps me to survive, and it's the way I live. He said, that's what subsistence is. Now, when I heard that, that stopped me right in my tracks, because he's talking about the way we live. Now, when I talked about this, this survival, this DNA found in these kids up the Tenaya Valley, up at Shaw Creek, where that science camp was. It's called the Early Morning Children. They found the remains of 2 kids there, and they took the DNA from them. They were Athabaskan Dene people of the interior. 11,400 years old. Now, we've survived. I mean, the native people have survived, and not only in Alaska, but all over the world. Wherever they survived, by living in harmony, and it's people, you may say harmony, yes it is, it's living with nature, surviving. And so as people, we do things for survival and protection of our kids, young people falling in love, kids. So you have a couple married and they're in love, kids. They have a family. They get together. They know this other couple, so they get together. There's 2 families, and then they know their cousins, and then there's a little village, and then a bigger village, and it's just all over the earth. So it's just part of human nature, survival, and living and knowing how to live with your environment and everything that comes from the earth. It's the natural flow of life and the natural flow of the seasons. And it's a natural flow of how human beings live on this earth. I just love the way that guy did that. Hit it right on the head,
Do you remember which village or community he was from?
Husla.
Oh, okay.
Husla on Hughes. And I remember that just hit me. And I still remember that. I'll never forget that.
Right here, huh?
Yeah, that's it. Now, if you think about people around the world, what were they doing? They were doing the same thing we were, only using their stuff.
Yeah.
Wherever in the jungle or wherever it was. When I was a kid, we didn't know anything about no jungle. When we came out and said, well, this area is about the size of California, to me it's like this area is about the size of the moon. Or I didn't know how big California was. I didn't even know where California was. When you're a kid from the village.
Yeah. What is a locomotive?
Yeah.
Why do I need to know how fast it's going?
Yeah. One thing I do want to say about this, when machines came to the village, the loudest ones were the airplanes. And I remember those old people would say, we were out hunting and we heard this terrible sound, big sound coming from down there. It just got louder and louder and louder. And here's this thing. Alaskan. It means people carrier in the air.
Oh.
Oh. And it's the land, out come the people. What the heck? But it was noisy. Now, if you go out in nature now, go out and listen. What you hear is something that's natural, is silence. So, here we are sitting here. We hear the buzzing of the lights. We hear sounds from trucks. We always, everywhere we go in this world today is noise. And so we're not living naturally. People say, well, fix everything up, we're going to live naturally. But once you start living with noise, you're not living.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, Dogadin.
Yeah,
Nabasi
Dogadin.
for your time today.
Yes.
I hope to have future time to share and learn from you and our other esteemed guests with this series. So that brings us to a close for today. Nabasi again to our guests and participants today, and be sure to look at the Morris Thompson social media and website for upcoming events.
Thank you.